Racist cop exposed, shocked to learn black woman is the head of internal affairs. A cold drizzle fell over Philadelphia, the neon reflections shimmering on empty streets. In that late-night gloom, Officer Trent Caldwell prided himself on cleaning up suspicious black motorists, pulling them over under flimsy pretexts, ignoring the growing complaints of racial bias. Tonight promised another routine stop, a lone black car idling near an unlit curb. Striding up with a hardened glare, Caldwell never bothered to check the driver's credentials before humiliating her. Little did he realize this soft-spoken black woman was Diane Hayes, newly appointed head of internal affairs for the very department he served. By dawn, the entire force would reel from a scandal unlike any before. Late on a Tuesday, Officer Trent Caldwell cruised through the quieter corners of Philadelphia, near University City. The deluge of raindrops obscured his windshield, but he flicked on overhead lights, itching for a stop that would justify his shift. He'd long carried a chip on his shoulder, believing certain neighborhoods thrived with criminal elements, and black residents were the main cause. Multiple internal complaints about biased stops hovered in his record, but never stuck enough to unseat him. Near Market Street, he spotted a black sedan idling with lights off, a single occupant. Looked suspicious, he told himself, ignoring that the occupant might just be waiting for a phone call or directions. With a sense of purposeful authority, he turned on his spotlight, bright beams slicing through the gloom to pin the sedan in place. Inside the sedan, Diane Hayes, a middle-aged black woman in a simple black coat, glanced up, startled by the glare. She was finalizing a text to her sister, ironically about staying safe in the city's unrelenting rain. At that moment, Caldwell's footsteps splashed through puddles toward her driver's side window. She exhaled, bracing for the all-too-familiar suspicion that would greet her. The flash of a badge, then his knock on the glass, signaled the beginning of a confrontation that would soon shake the entire precinct to its core. Caldwell tapped on the window. Hayes rolled it down an inch. Rain dripped off his uniform as he demanded, "ID and registration, what are you doing here?" She calmly asked, "Is there a reason for this stop, officer?" He huffed, "I said ID." Unmoved by courtesy, his tone bristled with suspicion. Hayes recognized the tension, recalling decades of dealing with law enforcement's prejudice. She complied, retrieving documents from her glove box, some official, some personal. She'd only arrived in Philadelphia a month prior, chosen by the commissioner for a newly created role heading internal affairs. So far, her presence was hush-hush, only a few top officials aware. She'd chosen not to flaunt her credentials prematurely, wanting to see the department's reality unfiltered. Now, ironically, that approach set the stage for a collision with Caldwell's biases. As Caldwell squinted at her license, he noted the name Diane Hayes. No immediate record popped in his mind. He flicked on his flashlight, scanning her face, the interior, searching for a reason to escalate. "Why parked here at this hour?" Hayes explained, voice measured. "I'm sending a text. I didn't want to drive while on my phone." Caldwell rolled his eyes, muttering something about cover story. The raindrops hammered overhead, building the tension. Hayes sensed the storm was just beginning. After glancing at her license, Caldwell demanded she step from the car. "Why?" Hayes questioned, well within her rights. "I suspect illegal substances or possible stolen property," he lied. No probable cause existed beyond her being a black woman in a quiet street. She exhaled, heart sinking at the blatant profiling. She considered revealing her position, head of IA, but paused, curious how far he'd push. Reluctantly, she complied, stepping into the drizzle. Caldwell loomed, shining a flashlight in her eyes. "Hands on the hood," he commanded, ignoring the fact that a random search was unwarranted. Hayes, in her internal monologue, noted the alarm bells. He's violating basic procedure. She considered a direct confrontation, but decided to see his true colors laid bare. He patted her down roughly, ignoring any sign of discomfort. A passing driver slowed, seeing the scene. A black woman in business attire forced against her car by a single officer in the rain. The driver, concerned, tapped a phone camera to record from a distance. Meanwhile, Caldwell rummaged in her pockets, found only a wallet with a few cards. No contraband, no stolen goods. Frustrated, he scowled, suspecting he might have to let her go. But a toxic idea formed in his mind. What if I found something to justify this? Hayes realized she was walking a tightrope, one step from a dangerous escalation. Across the street, Troy Jefferson, a longtime local, returned from a late shift at the hospital. Spotting the humiliating stop from a distance, he inched closer, phone angled discreetly. In his time, he'd seen officers harass neighbors for minor or non-existent reasons. This time, the situation looked especially wrong. She's not resisting, he muttered to himself. Why's he got her out in the rain? Troy recognized the potential for danger, recalling how quickly violence escalates when prejudice flares. So he recorded quietly, capturing Caldwell's abrupt rummage in Hayes's bag, the officer's scowl, and the woman's unwavering calm. Meanwhile, a second neighbor peered from a second-floor window, also filming. The random watchers formed a silent ring, an unseen audience ensuring the encounter's injustice wouldn't vanish unrecorded. Inside Hayes, tension coiled. She recognized these bystanders might become crucial witnesses. Meanwhile, Caldwell, still annoyed at finding nothing suspicious, snapped, "What's your real story, lady?" She remained composed. "Officer, I've told you. I was parking to send a text safely." He glowered, scanning her. His mind churned with the idea of planting suspicion. Hayes realized the next moment might be critical. She debated brandishing her official ID, but decided to wait a fraction longer to see if he'd cross the line into blatant fabrication. Increasingly frustrated, Caldwell rummaged through her small shoulder bag, ignoring her protest that he lacked probable cause. He patted down the interior, finding only typical items: phone charger, keys, a notepad. But he paused, eyes flicking to a side pocket. A sinister thought. I can slip something in, claim its evidence. Reaching to his own belt pack, he subtly retrieved a small bag containing a leftover from an old bust, some drug paraphernalia that never made official evidence logs. If he planted it on her, he'd have just cause to arrest. He covertly tried sliding it into the bag, but a moment later a voice rang out. "I'm filming, officer. We can see what you're doing," shouted a bystander from the curb. Caldwell jolted, dropping the bag onto the ground, its contents scattering. Hayes glimpsed the small plastic bundle. Fury ignited in her eyes. He was trying to frame her. The watchers murmured in shock. Caldwell tried to spin it. "Found it in her bag. She's carrying narcotics." The bystanders weren't convinced, with at least 2 cameras capturing the attempted drop. Hayes, still pinned by the officer's stance, realized the horrifying extent of his corruption. This was precisely why internal affairs needed oversight. She decided the moment had arrived to end this charade. She inhaled, summoning the voice of authority she rarely had to use in public. Stepping back from his discovery, Caldwell barked, "Now I have cause to arrest you for possession." He reached for his cuffs, ignoring the crowd's gasps. That's when Hayes turned, planting her gaze into his. "Officer, I'm Diane Hayes, newly appointed head of internal affairs for the Philadelphia PD. Lower your voice and your weapon now." A hush fell. Caldwell blinked, refusing to believe. "What nonsense. We have an internal affairs chief, but..." He hadn't checked departmental bulletins thoroughly, nor had he recognized that the newly created position was yet to be introduced. The watchers erupted in murmurs. Some recognized the name from a recent news snippet about a new IA head. Hayes pulled out a small black wallet from her inside jacket pocket, the official ID stating, "Philadelphia Police Department, Internal Affairs Division, Captain." The onlookers pressed closer, capturing every word. Caldwell's sneer melted into raw fear. He realized he'd forcibly detained and attempted to frame a high-ranking official with direct power to investigate and fire him. The moment of epiphany weighed like a hammer blow. Hayes, voice unwavering, commanded, "Take your hands off me, now." Caldwell, face ashen, let go, stumbling back a step. The entire street braced for the explosive fallout. Stunned onlookers broke into a mix of cheers and outraged exclamations. Some repeated, "She's the new IA boss." Others hurled condemnation at Caldwell, calling him a dirty cop for planting evidence. Troy Jefferson, the neighbor filming from across the street, shook his head in relief that Hayes was no random victim. The second woman by the window shouted, "We got it all on video. He tried to set you up." Caldwell, chest tight, attempted to salvage something. I didn't know, ma'am. You never identified yourself." Hayes fixed him with a calm, lethal stare. "You never asked. I had every right not to disclose until necessary, and your probable cause was non-existent." Her voice carried authority honed from years in law enforcement. He stammered, We had break-ins. I was doing my job." She retorted, "Your job doesn't include planting false evidence or harassing civilians. You've broken department policy, the law, and moral codes." The watchers murmured agreement. Hayes then made a brief call on her phone, instructing dispatch, "Send the on-duty watch commander here. We have an incident involving a compromised officer." Caldwell realized the unstoppable chain reaction was in motion. He recognized his career was effectively over. Within minutes, a precinct SUV pulled onto the block, lights cutting through the drizzle. Out stepped Lieutenant James Horowitz, the local watch commander, trailed by two uniformed cops. He surveyed the scene, Hayes standing composed, Caldwell pale with tension, a small crowd filming, plus the scattered fake evidence near the curb. Horowitz recognized Hayes instantly from departmental memos about the new IA leadership. Alarm flickered in his eyes. He approached, saluting quietly. "Ma'am, are you all right?" She nodded. "Physically, yes, but Officer Caldwell just tried to frame me. I'd like to initiate immediate disciplinary protocol." Horowitz swallowed. The watchers parted, letting him examine the suspicious plastic bag on the wet pavement. The bystanders insisted they'd filmed Caldwell planting it. Caldwell mumbled denials, but Horowitz had no illusions. With a quick nod to the two uniformed cops, he instructed them to escort Caldwell away. Gun and badge surrendered. Caldwell's protest fizzled, overshadowed by evidence. The hush that followed was thick with finality. Horowitz turned back to Hayes, voice lowered. "On behalf of the precinct, I apologize. We'll cooperate fully with your investigation." Hayes thanked him. The watchers erupted in applause, some chanting for Caldwell's immediate arrest. Horowitz assured them it was forthcoming. Meanwhile, Caldwell trudged into the SUV, face drawn, realizing the unstoppable wave of accountability had begun. The immediate fiasco resolved, Hayes conferred quietly with Horowitz, stepping aside from the public gaze. She explained the sequence of events from Caldwell's unauthorized stop to his blatant planting of contraband. Horowitz, appalled, assured her the commissioner would want swift action, especially given her IA leadership. Hayes gave a polite nod. "I expect full honesty from your precinct. This must be thoroughly documented." The following morning, news spread throughout the department. A newly minted head of internal affairs had been racially profiled and nearly framed by one of their own. Officers shared hushed chatter in break rooms, some outraged, others anxious about looming reforms. Meanwhile, the public saw phone videos of Caldwell forcibly arresting Hayes, followed by her reveal as IA chief. The media coverage soared. Racist cop tries planting evidence on his new boss. Memes trended on local social platforms. Inside the PD's main HQ, the commissioner assembled a crisis meeting with top staff. They recognized Hayes now held moral high ground to push for stronger oversight measures. The old guard realized they had no choice but to let her proceed unimpeded. In effect, Caldwell's vile act ironically boosted the very reforms he might have resisted, the hallmark of swift, ironic karma. Within days, an official inquiry was launched, led by a deputy from IA, as Hayes recused herself from directly investigating her own case. She provided a thorough statement, while multiple eyewitness videos were collected, each showing Caldwell's attempt to slip a bag under her seat. The inquiry discovered Caldwell's prior complaints for racially skewed stops and creative evidence. Indeed, red flags that once lay dormant in departmental files rose to the surface with unstoppable clarity. Caldwell, suspended and lawyered up, tried to craft a defense, claiming he mistook the bag for hers, or feared for his safety. The inquiry found zero merit. A mountain of evidence pinned him, from witness testimonies to camera footage. Even his fellow officers refused to shield him, outraged at how he'd tarnished the badge. Some insisted the department must purge those who hide behind uniform while abusing power. By the end, the IA panel recommended immediate termination plus referral for possible criminal charges for evidence tampering and false arrest. They recognized that with Hayes at the helm, the department had no excuse to bury wrongdoing. The panel closed their sessions, penning an unequivocal condemnation of Caldwell's actions, setting the stage for the final blow to come. A few weeks later, in a tense hearing at the Philadelphia Police Department headquarters, Caldwell faced the Departmental Board of Rights. Evidence was laid out methodically. Phone footage, eyewitness accounts, official statements from Hayes, and even the internal video logs from the station. Caldwell's feeble claims collapsed under scrutiny. The board's decision was unanimous, immediate dismissal, with strong language denouncing his racist misconduct. Applause erupted from some corners of the auditorium. The rest watched with solemn relief that the system finally acted. Simultaneously, the district attorney's office signaled an intent to prosecute Caldwell for civil rights violations, a felony that could carry prison time. The union, previously tolerant of borderline conduct, withdrew support, citing overwhelming evidence of wrongdoing. Caldwell left the hearing in disgrace, reporters hounding him. He refused to speak, ducking into a battered sedan with tinted windows, a final humiliation for a once arrogant cop. Captain Hayes, quietly observing from a vantage point, felt a swirl of satisfaction and sadness. Another officer undone by bigotry. She recognized the nuance. Punishing one bigot wouldn't eradicate systemic issues, but it was a start. She exhaled, leaving the hearing with renewed determination to reform the department so fewer Caldwells could thrive in the shadows. In the aftermath, Captain Diane Hayes resumed her daily responsibilities, forging new protocols for complaint investigations, encouraging an open-door policy for whistleblowers. She partnered with civil rights groups to design a better complaint submission process, ensuring allegations of racial bias were swiftly reviewed. The department's commissioners, chastened by public outrage, gave her broad leeway to enact changes. Younger officers found in her a mentor figure who insisted on transparency, building a healthier internal culture. Meanwhile, Hayes also fielded calls from local community leaders, praising her calm defiance of Caldwell's aggression. Many wanted to see her speak at town halls or youth gatherings about her experiences. She accepted some invitations, cautiously stepping into the public eye, emphasizing that her ordeal illustrated how prejudice can infiltrate even the most official ranks, and how people of integrity must confront it. In quiet moments, she grappled with residual trauma, the memory of a gun pointed at her under false pretenses. She overcame it by focusing on the bigger picture. Her new role could save countless citizens from a similar fate. Summoning her will, she advanced step by step, forging unity among officers who recognized the value of a more just force. Weeks turned to months, and a final piece of closure emerged. The local DA indicted Caldwell on criminal charges for official oppression and evidence tampering. The court set a trial date. Caldwell's attorney sought a plea bargain. Under intense pressure, Caldwell took a deal that included a guilty plea to lesser felony charges, ensuring he'd never serve as an officer again. He received probation plus community service. A portion of the community scoffed at the leniency, but the record remained a felony conviction. Caldwell's policing days were over. Local media covered the result extensively, framing it as the end of a dramatic saga that began with a simple traffic stop. A city editorial praised Captain Hayes for her calm, precise response, describing her victory as a clarion call that no uniform trumps moral accountability. The editorial ended with a note that the department's new IA head heralded a bright future for policing in Philly. As a final coda, Hayes gave one major interview on a Sunday morning show, articulating her vision for robust oversight, stating, "I want no citizen to fear the uniform. We must earn trust daily. My own experience proves the necessity." The host commended her bravery. The city exhaled, hopeful that from such a harrowing confrontation emerged the seeds of real transformation. Late one evening, after a particularly busy day, Captain Hayes strolled near the same block where Caldwell had stopped her. A gentle drizzle again pattered the streets, but she felt none of the dread from that fateful night. Instead, she carried the memory as a testament that even deeply ingrained racism can be toppled by firm resolve and moral clarity. Across the road, she spotted Troy Jefferson, the neighbor who'd filmed part of the incident. He recognized her and waved. Hayes approached, shaking his hand warmly. Troy thanked her for championing the community's safety by removing a dangerous officer from the force. She, in turn, expressed gratitude for his quick thinking in filming the event. "Without you, justice might have been harder," she admitted. They chatted about the city's slow but sure progress. Troy pointed out that more neighbors felt safe in lodging complaints now, sensing real accountability in the precinct. Hayes smiled, a gentle pride stirring. She realized the role was more than a job. It was a calling to ensure the uniform stood for protection, not oppression. The streetlights flickered as she bid Troy farewell, stepping into the subdued night with renewed hope. In that quiet moment, she resolved to keep forging the path so that no one else would endure what she had, especially those lacking her rank or resources. In the end, Officer Trent Caldwell's reckless attempt to frame a random black woman on a lonely Philadelphia street backfired in the most poetic way imaginable. She was none other than Captain Diane Hayes, newly instated head of internal affairs. His weaponized prejudice collided with her quiet authority, unraveling his career and launching vital reforms within the police department. From that rainy confrontation to the precinct's stunned reaction, each step revealed how a single spark of bigotry can ignite unstoppable demands for justice. Yet the real triumph went beyond one cop's downfall. By exposing how easily power can be abused, Captain Hayes reawakened an entire city's commitment to transparency. Her courageous stand became a beacon for colleagues, local activists, and everyday citizens who refused to let racism go unchecked. If this intense journey of prejudice shattered and justice served resonated with you, please like, spread the story, and subscribe to our channel. Your engagement fuels more narratives where unwavering integrity defeats even the darkest corners of bias, reminding us that truth, once revealed, is unstoppable.